This episode contains discussions about pregnancy loss, abuse, suicidal ideation, self-harm, transracial adoption, and fostering high-risk children. Please listen with care.
There's all these little boys and girls all dressed up, holding the hands of their social workers, hoping to find a mommy and a daddy that day. That cycle of my heart is hurting, so I'm going to make my body hurt. I get an endorphin dump. It's why cutting becomes addictive, especially for young adults. And I had my nursery ready. The baby named everything. It was really sad for all of us.
Welcome to the Breadcrumb Effect podcast,
where we interview interesting people with a story to tell
and share what breadcrumbs they've picked up along the way. I'm Danny.
And I'm Brittany.
Welcome to the Breadcrumb Effect.
Welcome to the Breadcrumb Effect. Today's guest is Lisa Trout, a mom of 5, Mimi to her grandbabies, pastor and foster mom who's opened her home to over a dozen children over the years, alongside her husband of 26 years. But more than anything, this conversation is about the breadcrumbs, the quiet, often unexpected ways God leads us through seasons we didn't plan and wouldn't choose, yet somehow uses every single one for something meaningful. Guys, this one is deeply emotional. We found ourselves in tears more than once, but it's also filled with so much hope, faith, and purpose. It's definitely the kind of story that stays with you. So let's dive into her breadcrumbs.
I'm a mom. I'm a Mimi.
Oh, I love
all the
Mimi.
things. And I love being a Mimi. I have 3 grandbabies.
Meaning how the kids always end up deciding the name.
Tell Brittany how many kids you have.
I have 5 kids. I've got 2 married daughters, a son who's engaged. I have a son in the Navy. He's training to become an aerial rescue diver. So that's pretty exciting.
Wow.
Yeah, so he has like 2 years. It's a special forces branch. So he's got 2 years of training here in the States to a big grand adventure. His goal is to be a firefighter. And so the Navy is a great way to train for that and have an adventure in the meantime. Yeah. First responders running the family.
Wow.
I was certified as an EMT, but I never got to work as one. We got married when I was 19. And I went to the hospital to pick up my application. I wanted to work in the ER as an EMT because I'm a terrible driver and they didn't want me behind the wheel of an ambulance. And I'd be creating more emergencies. Get to my application for the hospital, stopped by to pick up a pregnancy test. I was pregnant and the application went in the garbage. So that was that. So, but all my training helped me keep 5 kids alive. So it was not wasted, especially my youngest, Jaron. I utilized a lot of my first responder skills, keeping him alive. People always ask me, are you nervous when he's in the Navy? Or are you like, and they find out it's going to be an aerial rescue diver. And like, doesn't that scare you that he's going to be doing? I'm like, you do not know what it was like to raise this kid. At least they're training him how to do risky things in a safer way. He is better there. We let him play football all through school. And again, he had head injuries and all the things that go with that. But all of his head injuries were not football, because in football, he had a helmet. He had protection. He lived life like he played football. So anyway.
That's so funny. Like, he's in football. You would think head injury comes from that, but no, it's all the other things that he does. You know, they always say boys is a lot, it's different, right? Like, boys are a little more chaotic, right? But they're easier in other ways. And then girls are maybe a little more calm, but they're harder in different ways. And I find that it's so true. I have yet to find anything that says differently.
Gosh. Okay, and so now you have 3 grandchildren. And what ages now?
They're 3, 2, and 1.
Brittany, I love that you just really did not believe Lisa's. I know, because right, she looks amazing.
No, Grandma. But you know, hey, you just have to be like, yeah, I look amazing. You look great, girl.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I have this memory, Lisa. You're talking about how you always wanted to be a mom. It's like you always knew you wanted to be a mom, and you always knew you wanted to have a lot of kids. So what influenced that for you?
Honestly, growing up the way we did with all of our cousins, I had one sibling, and it makes me emotional just thinking about our grandma and the life we had with all our aunts and uncles and cousins, and my mom's one of 5. Just a happy family that grew up together for the most part. And my grandmother had the 5 kids, and I saw the life that produced for her and for all of us, and what it was like to grow up with all those cousins. And I wanted that for my life. I wanted my grandma's life. Honestly, anybody who knew my grandma, she is the best human any of us have ever known. She had 5 kids. She had 3 girls and 2 boys in 7 years and 2 miscarriages. And so did I. And you can't plan all that, obviously. You can't really plan any of that.
She lived this great life, so you are
Yeah.
living this great life. She lived, so you live. She had these 5 children and 2 miscarriages. You had these 5 children and 2 miscarriages. Her love, talking about love and fostering that, has just spread out to all of us. And I see you doing that with your own family.
Thank you. She definitely had a gift of valuing every single person who sat in front of her. My favorite thing when anything would happen in my life is to go tell grandma about it, because she just made me feel like the most important person ever. And I watched her do that with every single person that would sit, which with a huge family like hers and all her friends. And it was a real gift that she had to love and value people the way she did.
I can describe it as she made them feel like the most important person in the world. And that's such a good skill. I saw that in the corporate world, right? When you look at the leaders of companies and CEOs, and I would kind of think, what is it about what do they have that maybe a middle manager doesn't have? And that's the skill that I see time and time again of, top level CEOs, is they make everyone feel important. And then it makes people want to be under their leadership and want to follow their ways, just like grandma did for us, right? Like, so we all wanted to follow in her same way.
I was interested because you mentioned like you wanted your grandma's life, and then she had 5 kids and 2 miscarriages. You have 5 kids and had 2 miscarriages, which and I don't know if this is an appropriate question, and you can tell me I don't want to answer. But
I'm an open book.
When we were growing up, we didn't know about, maybe like our parents or our grandparents. They didn't always talk about a miscarriage. I just feel like in general, that wasn't something that maybe was discussed. And as time goes on, or as maybe you go through it, they would then open up at that point. Did you know that she has miscarriages like when you were a young adult, or did you only find out whenever you were going through it?
I feel like I knew that she had 2 miscarriages. I probably learned it when I had my first. Grandma wasn't one to really talk about herself. If you asked her questions, she would freely share. But she was really good at asking us all the questions. She didn't just sit there and talk about herself, but she wouldn't mind answering questions. So I feel like it was when I had my first that I learned, you love your baby right away. And there's so much grief when you lose them. And I was amazed at how many women had miscarriages. I didn't know it was as common as it was until I had mine. And I just came out of the woodwork and were so empathetic and compassionate towards my grief. And
Yeah.
for the most part, there was, I had 4 kids at the time when I had my first miscarriage and then my second. And especially when I had my second, it was a mixed response of compassion. And some people were, isn't this God's way of giving you a break, maybe? Or maybe this is your body's way of telling you you're done. And medically, those things can be true. But my heart wasn't done. And I was terrified of having a 5th child. Oh, my word. I loved having my kids, but that was a full-on sprint. And I didn't plan on having 5 kids in 7 years. I hung my pants up next to Eric's and I was pregnant. And they were all surprises. I don't call them accidents. They were surprises, big surprises. And but that there was something to losing those back-to-back babies, that whatever fear I had about the possibility of the 5th, and because I knew that we were supposed to have another kid. When I had my 4, we'd sit around the dinner table and I'd look around and there was just somebody missing, and I knew it. And I think, oh, darn it, how could there be another one? It feels so much already. But having those 2 miscarriages took that fear away, because I loved that baby. I lost that baby. And I just it put this fight in me for him. And when I'd have people make comments about, well, 5 kids, don't you know how this works? It was just like this. I'm sorry, which of my 5 should not be here? They matter. They value.
Not a statistic. I know.
And my 5th is Jaren, the grand finale, the one that kept me on my toes. And
the one, you know what? You had to put your EMT stuff to use. And so he had to be here for that.
That's right.
And now he's going to turn around and save lives. Like, that is amazing. Like, you knew in your heart that you needed to have him when nobody else understood. And this is why we're doing this breadcrumb effect project, is because breadcrumbs can be a physical sign. They can be a voice from God. It could be like a knowing. It could be a trusting your gut. So to me, you sitting around that table and knowing that there's somebody in your future that's missing, that to me is a breadcrumb too. So you having gone to EMT school, you knowing that you're going to have this 5th child, and now him growing up to save lives, like, that's amazing.
I just want to say one PSA for everyone that's listening. If you ever encounter a woman who goes through a miscarriage, only offer words of encouragement, words of support, and even sometimes saying like, oh, maybe God had another plan. Maybe in the right context, you can say that. But if you don't know me that way, please don't say that. That's not something that, well, me personally, I don't know how everyone else feels. I'm talking for myself. I didn't want to hear that when I had my miscarriage, because I just lost a whole dream. Like when you find out you're pregnant, you have a dream of what this baby's going to be like, what your life is going to be like with this baby. And for you to say, oh, like God didn't want it. Maybe I will look back and think that. I do now. I look back and think, oh, that was not the right timing. God has perfect timing. It wasn't the right timing for me. But I don't want to hear that in the moment.
Yeah.
Anyways, sorry.
I think it's an awkward moment for some people, and they don't know how to respond. It's hard. Our culture is not good at responding to grief and death and loss. And we're not good at mourning. We're really quick to move on. And we do the same thing in the church. And we say things like, oh, that must be God's will. And no, death and brokenness and sin was not God's will. That's the whole point. He came to redeem that. And he can take horrible things like loss and death and somehow make good come from it. It doesn't mean that situation was good, but he can make good come from that. But to say, oh, it's God's will that your baby died, no, it's not. No, it's not. Death doesn't come from God.
Oh, that was beautifully said. Thank you, Lisa. I think that, I honestly think that somebody, whenever they hear that, truly.
Oh my gosh, did you hear my dog's big sigh just then? Like, oh, yes. I think it would be great for Brittany and others to hear about what that was like raising your kids in your church. And maybe if you want to share a little about that.
We've been pastors our whole marriage. We were youth pastors for 15 years. Youth pastors way beyond the time we were still cool. Eric's been a worship leader. About 14 years ago, we launched our own church and have been senior pastors since. Lots of up and downs through church world, but overall, raising our kids in the church has been such a blessing. Motherhood itself can feel so lonely, especially those toddler years when you are like, do I have to read the same book for the 50th time to this child? The schedule and the confines of raising little kids and the nap times and the early bedtime, you really give up a lot of your freedom and autonomy, and you trade up for this beautiful gift of motherhood, but it can feel lonely. And so having a community of moms who were raising kids as well, and friends, and for my kids to have friends like that, the community aspect is one part of it. And then also our faith, because motherhood will kick your ass. And I needed God every day. I needed his love for my kids. I needed his patience for my kids, because I did not naturally have it myself to love my kids all the time, every day, and be patient with them. But I needed the Lord and his strength every day to raise them, and then to have friends who felt the same way, that we could encourage each other and cry together and laugh together and love our kids together is pretty special.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that you needed God for patience, because I think sometimes
my kids would tell you that.
We all do, though. We all do. And I think sometimes, like, we can go to church and, I mean, I'm guilty of this. You go to church, you put on your, like, you know, happy face. If you don't have the right community, you can feel like you have to put on a front. But God doesn't want us to do that. He wants us to show up as our authentic self and you use him. We need him because ourselves, we are sinful in nature. We don't have the patience. He helps us have the patience. And the fact that, I also have to say the fact that y'all started a church 14 years ago, that's an accomplishment in itself. That's not easy.
No. And we, through COVID, and there's been different changes over the years. And so in some respects, we've kind of replanted a church, I think 5 times in those 14 years. Definitely been one of the hardest and most wonderful things we've ever done. Yeah. But hopefully we're settled for a good long while. We have a thing where we say we're not going to church. We are the church. We just happen to gather in this building.
Yeah. What led y'all to starting your own church? I mean, I feel like that might have there might be a breadcrumb moment in there.
Honestly, just God speaking to us, because it isn't something, if someone has it in them to go start a church because they want to be a senior leader of a church, they're doing it wrong. It's way too harsh. Ministry is really hard and super wonderful. I mean, our job is to love and take care of God's people. People are messy and people are hard, myself included. That's all we can do, right? Follow what we believe, the reason why God's put us on this earth. And you guys are doing this podcast. It's clear that you want to be intentional with your lives and your time and make the most of this space that we have while we're here. I don't want to waste a minute of it. Doing the big, scary, brave thing was hard, but I think it would have been harder to say no and stay comfortable.
It's all the same, right? It's a pull, it's a draw, it's listening to the voices in your head. And yeah, I feel like I
don't know about listening to voices in your head. Sometimes those can be crazy.
Mine are.
Well, it's important to differentiate. This is the one I need to listen to. This is the one I don't need. And it takes practice, right? But also you have to open up your mind to receive these messages like you and Eric, right? Like receiving these messages from God. And that's one thing that I was going to ask is, so for those people that are listening that might hear that and it might be a foreign concept for them of listen to this voice of God, what form does that come in for you? So you mentioned confirmations. An example of maybe what a confirmation might look like.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think presuppositionally to that, though, is to know the voice of God. You have to know God, to know what he sounds like and his character. That's how you discern the difference between those voices. Does God talk to me like this or not? God showed us who he is through the word. The word is the language of God, the Bible. And so really knowing the Bible, staying fluent in the Bible, I read it every day because that's how I discern the voice of God. A bank teller, the bank teller has to be able to know the difference between counterfeit money and real money. And the way that they know the difference between counterfeit money isn't by studying the counterfeit, isn't by handling it because they're just familiar with it. They study and they look at and they constantly handle real money. So they know real money. So when the counterfeit comes through, they can say, oh, no, that's not real. And that's how you constantly need to be handling what the truth is, reading the truth, knowing the truth. And the word isn't just words on a page, it's alive. So when I'm reading the word, I'm fellowshipping with God. I'm spending time with him as my friend. And so his voice becomes familiar to me, and so I know it. Then when the big moments come, like, oh, go do this big thing, I've been listening to him. I've been spending time with him in the little things throughout my day so that I have an ear to hear the big moment that makes you want to go, well, I didn't hear that.
My grandma was telling me about, and you'll have to forgive me, I have no idea what this book is called. Lisa, you might just randomly know, but it is a book, and basically it shares that a practice that they do for, I don't know if it was 90 days or 60 days, something like that, where every hour they would spend 5 minutes talking to God, praying. Because sometimes we pray, like, let's say we pray in the morning or at night or something, but we're praying like a big thing. But in the word, it says, come to me for everything, right? So this, this little thing, like, I mean, it can be as simple as, you know, what shoe to wear. I mean, that might be silly, but like, he's okay with that. Like, he wants constant dialogue with us. And I haven't gotten the book yet, but she told me about it. And she said that she was doing this now so often. I think she was in day 60 or something like that, where it's like she started to hear God more because she was talking to him more. And she started to really understand, like, okay, like, you know, this is now a very easy decision, or this big thing doesn't seem as big because I'm talking to him about everything. He's showing up more in my life because I'm in constant communication with him.
People need that guidance to help train and make their brains open, their minds open. I think that's great. One thing that you said, Lisa, that I really liked is that y'all really value order and peace in your household. And I'm sure it's a ripple effect out into your church as well. But can you give maybe some of the listeners some examples of how does that happen in a house with 5 kids and 3 grandchildren?
Well, order is a relative term. I heard this term once, and I think it's a better descriptor of more chaotic, where there's chaos and there's order. And somewhere in the middle is this chaotic where there is structure, but there's a lot in the middle of there. That's kind of what I achieve. I strove for order. I always said that if I ever wrote a book on motherhood, it would be called I Was a Wonderful Mother Until I Had Kids.
That is a great title.
Because they definitely brought out all the things in me. We were going to have this family that looked like this. That's not how it comes out. I mean, my kids were wonderful, but we, in spite of all our best efforts and all the things we tried to protect them from and keep them from, we still had, I mean, my oldest daughter, I think she started sneaking out of my house at 12 years old. She took us on a wild ride, and she's doing so well now. She's married. She's got a daughter. She actually works for our church. She's living the life she was never going to live. And, you know, being the firstborn in a pastor's family, there's definitely was pressures put on her, and she's very strong. So she was like, and no, I'm not going to do that.
I heard a story recently of some guy that was like, you know, I took my daughter to all these national parks and she complained the whole time and she never wanted to do that. And we did all these family trips. And now as an adult, she brings her boyfriend home. And what does she want to do? She wants as a family to go to all these national parks and show them all the things she learned when she was a kid. It's like, why? Yeah. It's we're in them without them knowing. And it's planted somewhere, deep rooted in there somewhere, and it will come out for their betterment. And I think that's a great example of no, and I appreciate you being honest too with that, right? Because oftentimes, especially being a pastor, some might want to project, yes, like that perfect family, or we can do no wrong in our home. And so thank you for being honest in that too.
I think and it's truly a misperception of perfection. It creates such barriers between us and other people. Yeah, we found it was always our endeavor to just be who we were in our brokenness, loved by God, whether we were the youth pastors, the senior leaders, or someone sitting in the pew. And it did help create a culture, I think, of safety for people. You know, when we were going through what she did, it actually was a moment for a lot of healing for people, because having teens in crisis is not uncommon. It's such a pain and such a point of vulnerability as a parent. It feels like a point of failure, you know, because you can think of 1,000 things you could have done differently to prevent that. Nobody's perfect, but that doesn't mean we could have prevented it, right? Mom guilt's real regardless. And so then when you have terrible things happening to your baby, that reinforces that mom guilt. For us to be in a place of leadership and have a daughter who was going through what she did, and part of her crisis was she was cutting. And so she has scars all over her arms. And, you know, when we'd come to church and she'd be standing next to me, and people knew what we were going through. But it opened up so many conversations with so many moms who just needed someone to cry with, someone to pray with, not judge them, to feel sad with them, to pray and fight for their kid with them, stand together through what is for most moms the worst thing, aside from your child losing a child, is having your child go through crisis. And so it actually has created, I feel like, a huge bridge for us with people. It's not a it's only a disqualifier if you pretend it's not happening.
It sounds like y'all were there to support. It sounds like she does have some big feelings and she didn't know where to put those big feelings sometimes. I haven't shared this with Brittany. I don't even think you know, but I myself went through a period of cutting, and I'll tell you, I freaking loved it. Like, it is like there's some wires crossed, it is messed up, but I didn't know where to put my anger, my frustration. I already had like a low self-value, right? Like, so it was like the perfect storm, and that it would calm me. It's like so messed up, but like it's
a way to take your internal pain that people can't see and put it on the outside where you can see it, and you're causing physical pain. So there's a natural endorphin release that happens in your body chemically to help compensate for that pain. And so that cycle of my heart is hurting, so I'm gonna make my body hurt, I get an endorphin dump. It's why cutting becomes addictive, especially for young adults.
Wow. I'm glad that you said that, and that actually makes a lot of sense.
Do you mind if we just, can I pray with you? Can we pray? Is that okay, Danny?
Yeah.
Father, you know her inner thoughts, her heart. I know that the things she's thinking and saying grieve you more than it even grieves Danny to hear these things. But we also know that you can heal her mind. You can heal her heart. You can give her hope. You can give her purpose. God, I hear Danny saying, I don't know what to do with this. I need help. God, I pray that you would help her. You would show her how to heal, help her feel secure, help her feel loved. God, I pray for the therapists that they would have wisdom beyond what their books ever taught them, that this season would come to an end. Thank you, Lord. Amen. Thank you, Dan. I'm going to continue to pray. Thank you. Yeah.
Where's my Kleenex? You me to get the box over here.
It's so upsetting to hear even our foster kids say things like that, and I've only known them a little bit.
See, there's not a single episode that's gone by where somebody hasn't cried.
Yeah.
Maybe hear a little bit more about your foster journey, because I know, like, that's not what, I know you said this, right? Like, you had a vision for your life, or you saw in the future what you thought it would look like, and it's not what it's happening now, right?
Yeah, no, before we got married, we talked about wanting to have 6 kids. We started having kids. And, at 3 kids, I felt like, okay, this is a lot. Maybe we're done. Maybe we're taking a break. Oh, no, I'm pregnant again. And, until the 5s came, and I had a lot of really awful health issues after each pregnancy. Just awful postpartum depression, postpartum hyperthyroidism. None of that got diagnosed till after my 5th. So I went through all of that without knowing what was going on with my body. And so after Jaren and those things got diagnosed, we just knew my body was done. And we felt at peace about like being done, and our family felt complete. But we always had this thing in the back of our mind about, how would have 6 kids? And we had talked about possibly adopting, that maybe being a part of our family journey when we were engaged. But obviously that conversation got put on hold while we were having our kids. And they were still young when I came across the scripture in James that says true religion is to care for the orphan and the widow. And that just jumped off the page at me, because and just thinking about those words, that this is true religion, not a belief system, not what I think I know, not what I proclaim is true, but it's to care for the orphan and the widow in their distress. It's love in action. It's taking a belief system and living it out. And, the orphan and the widow represent people that are in distress, people that can't help themselves. Our culture specifically does a pretty good job taking care of widows, but we do an awful job taking care of single mamas. At that time in my life, adoption wasn't in my mindset. My kids were still really little, but I really wanted to start putting that scripture in action and started asking the Lord to give me opportunities to do that. And it started with befriending various single moms and just being there, watching their kids for them, being their friend, my kids being there for them. So that's kind of the seed form of where things started for us in our foster journey. I had a dream that I had rescued this little baby, and I was like having to navigate all these dangerous situations and like protect this baby. And I had just met this baby, but this baby felt like my baby, that I loved this baby immediately like he was mine, and I was going to die trying to protect him. And I woke up and I just thought, it's such kind of a wild dream, right? And I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And sometimes God has spoken to me through my dreams. Again, I would never make a big life decision on a dream, but it can be a signpost for me to say, hey, pay attention to this. And so I did start thinking and praying about that. And my husband at the time was on a trip, on a missions trip, and he came home. And I said to him, Eric, I have this dream and I cannot stop thinking about it. And I told him the dream and I said, I wonder if the Lord is wanting us to pursue adoption, which with my kids, I was done with the baby season. And that felt like, wow, restarting. That feels like really hard and big. But he said when he was on that trip, the guy that he was traveling with, he said to him, he just had this stirring in his heart for adoption. And he had said to him, it's like, I think God's wanting us to pursue adoption. And so we simultaneously, opposite sides of the world, were sensing the same thing. And so I thought, okay, this feels big. This feels hard. Part of me really doesn't want to do this. I'm really enjoying my new levels of freedom. But what a fool would I be to ignore if God takes the time to put something on both of our hearts? I will regret not pursuing this. So doing the big, scary, hard thing in faith that I'm following what God's asking me to do, I don't know a different way to live my life. I think that's the only place where grace exists. I knew I needed to act quickly while the iron's hot and not just like put it off, but I didn't know where to start. It feels like swallowing the elephant. Like, how do you adopt a kid? And there's different ways to do that. And at the time, I was like, we're only going to pursue a private adoption situation where I can take a young little child, a baby, I can train them up the way that is important to me, the order, all the things, have peace in my home. We had a big home with lots of people in and out of it as pastors. And so I needed a home that I knew would be safe for everybody coming in and out. And there's so much risk involved with kids that come from hard places. And so private adoption was the best way to do what I felt like we were supposed to do in the most sanitized way, for lack of a better term. That's how it felt at the time. I could have the most control. That's a better way to say it. I felt like I had the most control. I called an adoption agency and just said, hey, we're interested in private adoption.
We have to tell you about something we've been loving lately. It fits our whole breadcrumb philosophy perfectly. It's called the Feel Good Workbook, and it was created by Dr. Kell, who you might remember from our manifesting episode. You know how she talks about following the universe's breadcrumbs? This workbook is basically that, but on paper, with actual tools you can use in real life. The idea behind it is honestly so simple, but so powerful. It teaches you how to use your human guidance system, which is basically your built-in compass for life. Think of it like the game Hot and Cold. When something feels good, you're moving in the right direction. When something feels heavy or off, that's your signal that you're getting colder and maybe taking a step away from what you actually want. What we love about this workbook is that it shows you how to read those emotional signals in real time and then shift back to feeling good fast. Not ignore your feelings, not push through, just gently course correct so you stay aligned with where you're meant to go. Because here's the thing, the key to health, healing, and honestly creating a life you love is feeling good. And when you feel good, you're aligned, you're magnetic, you're following the breadcrumbs. And when you don't, this workbook helps you figure out why and what to do next. And the best part is our listeners get 10% off the Feel Good workbook. Just use the code breadcrumbs10 at checkout. Feel free to go to the link in our show notes, or you can go to Linktree/Dr. Kelly. That's Dr.Kelley. So if you're trying to live more intentionally, more aligned, and actually enjoy the path you're on, this is such a good place to start.
They sent me the paperwork and oh my goodness. And so I just started filling out paperwork, a couple pages a day. And we did the home study and we did the training and we got our license for private adoption. And in that process, we thought we were going to adopt from overseas, but we almost during the home study phase of this, a girl came to our church who was pregnant. She herself was adopted from a Russian orphanage when she was 5, which is a whole thing, and has really severe FAS, fetal alcohol syndrome, which is, I think, one of the saddest disabilities ever, because she just the emotional upheaval and the mental instability, but wanting a normal life. So she was pregnant, but she knew she couldn't raise her baby. And it was so sad for her. So she actually she had heard through friends that we were wanting to adopt a baby. So she actually approached us and immediately, yes, let's do this. So I put the nursery together, walked with her through her whole pregnancy. She was in our home all the time, spent the holidays, did a gender reveal with us. And then Mother's Day weekend, she had her baby. Turns out there was another family out of state that she was courting this whole time. I think she wanted us to adopt her more than she wanted us to adopt her baby, I think is what was happening. And so she gave her baby to this other family. And I had my nursery ready. The baby named everything. It was really sad for all of us. But I can't blame her. She's, she herself is unstable, right? That's why she was in that place. I had friends who worked in the NICU. They were nurses in the NICU, and they said, "Oh, we have babies all the time that need homes that come to the NICU. When, a baby is abandoned at the hospital, they're sent to the NICU." I was like, yes, okay, let me know. We're ready. We're certified. But we found out that we had to actually have a foster license to receive those babies, that a private adoption license wouldn't work because they become wards of the state when they're abandoned. And so the state goes through the foster license. You have to be licensed for DCYF. So we went through the whole process again to get our foster license, which is a whole nother stack of paperwork and study, the whole thing. And that took about 6 months to get our foster license. The week we got our foster license, we got a phone call from our foster agency and they said, "Hey, there's this event going on that we think you guys would really benefit from attending. We know that you're interested in adopting, a newborn, foster to adopt a newborn, but this might be a good experience for you." Like, okay. It was called an adoption fair. So Eric and I got in the car on a Saturday morning, pulled into the parking lot at this gymnasium, and we looked, and there's all these little boys and girls all dressed up, holding the hands of their social workers, hoping to find a mommy and a daddy that day. And we just sat in the car and sobbed our guts out. Like, how do we go in there and just meet these kids and not take them all home and take any of them home? And it just was so strange and heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. And so we walk in and they hand us a folder with the pictures of each of the kids and their little bios. And they say, "We know that this is awkward. And we know that this is hard, but we need these kids to not be faces on a computer screen. They're kids that need families and they need to be known." So we go in the corner and sob our guts out again, get ourselves together enough to walk through those doors. And they had games set up and stations and lunch, ways for the kids to interact with people. And, they come up and they ask you a question. If they're brave enough to ask a question, you answer. We have stickers. We give them a sticker, and they thought their sticker book because they asked enough questions of enough adults. They can go to the toy store and get toys there that they had set up. So we're walking around doing this, looking at all these kids, and some of their sibling sets of like one of them had like 4 little kids that were had all placed in different homes. And like, this is one of the chances they got to be together and maybe get adopted that day. So Eric and I, like, we walked to one part of the gymnasium, and there's these little boys playing basketball. My husband's 6'8", I'm 5'11", and they see us walk up, and these little guys just start dribbling the ball, shooting the basket, like, pick me, I'll be a good basketball swim for you. So we went and sat down and had lunch. There's this little girl sitting off by herself, and we just went over to go talk with her, and we so drawn to her. And reliving it is so tender. And so we started talking, and she had a brother that came over, and then a social worker came over, and this is Gabe and Chloe, and they have 3 other siblings. So we meet the 3 other siblings. They're these 5 little kids that are so sweet, so cute. So not what we were expecting. And the 3 kids were placed in one home, and those 2 were in another. So the 3 youngers had to leave pretty quickly, but we stayed and shut the place down and played games with the older 2. They were 6 and 7 at the time. And we got in the car, and our plan of what things were supposed to look like was out the window. And I said to Eric, how do we adopt Hyde's kids? We have 5. And I said, who else is going to do it? I feel like I'm the only one's dumb enough to try. So we called the social worker and said, we'd like to learn more about these kids. And we got lost in the system. And they were lost in the system, and we didn't hear back from the social workers for like 3-4 months about them. And during that time, the other 3 were placed with relatives, which is the goal, the hope, right? If they can't be with their bio parents. But the older 2 needed a home, and they needed a forever home. But the termination hearing was so it's where the state officially declares the rights of the parents terminated, and then the kids need to be adopted, was going to be happening in 2 weeks. We took those 2 kids in, and from day 1, we were mom and dad. They knew they were coming to our home to be adopted. We loved them so much. And days before the termination trial, their mom got arrested, and for, I think it was prostitution and drugs. And the state of Washington considers incarceration accessing services. And so it reset mom's termination trial. And because, they received counseling and things in jail. And so, but this cycle had gone on for years. And so 2 years later, they had vetted their relatives that had determined that the other relatives that didn't have the younger 3, that they weren't viable placement for the kids because one of them the one that they could consider had a convicted felon living in her home and had babies from all kinds of dads. She loved the kids, but wasn't a healthy placement to them. These kids were Black kids living in a white family. I got called a white savior and all these kinds of things for being around town with my kiddos. And I thought, gosh, you don't know how much I've sacrificed to love these kids. And I don't feel like they're savior. I feel like they're saving me. Anyway, long story short, a judge ruled that because we were a white family, and this is what was stated in court, that because we were a white family, we could not effectively raise Black children. And so they were placed with this relative who had failed 2 home studies and had a convicted felon living in our home. Our little girl cried herself to sleep every night for a month until they had to move. But yeah, that's how God tricked us into foster care. So after then, oh my goodness, we've had 14 kids now since then. in our home. I've had newborn up through teen, a young gal who had a toddler and a baby, overwhelmed. And she wanted to give her baby to her neighbor. And our neighbor called me and she gave me her baby, which that was a wild moment because I'm sitting here holding this 3-week-old newborn that this mom is literally giving me and wants me to adopt her baby, which was what originally, right, was what we thought would need to happen. But I'm holding this baby and I'm thinking, this baby is not meant for me. I'm not supposed to adopt this baby, which was wild because that was like, what? It's so, to say dream scenario is terrible because everything involved in this is plan B. If you're adopting, if you're foster care, it's all because something broken happened. We're supposed to be with our bio parents. That's the healthiest thing, right? So I don't know how to phrase that effectively, but holding this newborn that was being given to me, I thought would have happened. But this baby wasn't mine. There was a family that couldn't have kids and had wanted to adopt, and they had put their adoption profile the month that this baby was conceived. They adopted her. So I got to facilitate that. It was really special to take care of that baby. Remember one little guy came to us. He was 9 years old in Seattle. His mom was a drug addict. He showed up with a garbage bag with a couple clothes and a monster doll. And that's all he had. So I took him to Target to get some toys. And he just stood there looking and he didn't know what to pick out. He had just spent all his time on his phone, on the internet. And I said, hey, what about a ball? And he goes, well, what would I do with that? And it was just a bouncy ball. And he's like, well, we could play catch. He goes, said, what's catch? I said, what about a coloring book? And I showed him the coloring book, like a superhero one. And he goes, why aren't any of these pictures colored in? And I said, well, because then you get to color them in. Why would I want to do that? He had never colored in a coloring book. I took him to the beach. And he had never seen the water. And he stood there with his arms out going, this place is so beautiful. So we went and bought mud boots and shovel and went to the beach every day while he was with us. He was with us while they found a relative for him. He moved in with an uncle. But to be a part of those kind of moments with kids is so amazing. That kid was a ton of work. He had so many big behaviors, but it was a holy privilege to teach him how to play catch and color in a coloring book and go to the beach. Took him to the zoo, and I just stuffed him full of as many memories as I could in that short time he was here. We've had a toddler. I was actually sitting down with my granddaughter yesterday. We have those family photo books. This little guy was in some of the pictures. She pointed out, who's that? And then another one of our foster kids was in another picture. Who's that? I was sitting thinking, now this is going to be interesting for our grandkids as they grow up, and how many faces have been in our family that aren't in our family anymore because we looked at them for a little while. So there's levels of foster care. There's the kiddos that are high risk behaviors. It's called BRS, behavioral risk status. And you have to have another level of training as a foster home to have these BRS kids. I said, well, we'll just re-engage foster care, but do like short-term placements and respites with like a week kind of thing. We had a 13-year-old come. He just needed a weekend stay with us. He was not in a good placement. He was with a relative, and it was a really hard situation for him. And we just loved him right away. He needed a place to be longer. And so we said, yeah, he can stay. He was a BRS kid. And so that meant us needing to be certified for BRS. So I did the training for that so that he could stay in our home. And I thought he was going to be with us till he was graduated out. He was with us for about a year. At first, it was wonderful. And his behaviors were all at school, which was not wonderful. He would like literally barricade himself in classrooms and run away from school and all this good stuff. And I had to go get him, but at home, he was like amazing. And then the behavior started at home. He started stealing from us. He had substance abuse issues, and the stealing got pretty intense, where he was going into like our closet. It became his choice that he didn't want to live here anymore because, I did a terrible thing like take his video games away because he stole $200 from us and spent it on Fortnite. And so, um, anyway, so that placement ended, but I loved him so much and loved having a kid with that high of needs in our home and experiencing our home be a place of healing. So we went from, I'm only going to do private adoption so that I can be in control of how this kid lives their life, to now being the highest needs placement ever. And I loved how, if the Lord had said, do that, I would have said no. I never would have made that first phone call, but he knew how to get me to follow the breadcrumbs to where we're supposed to be today. We're actually on a break right now because when we had a longer placement, we take a break to just refresh. I had a foster mom friend of mine who's had like over 20 kids say that that's one of the things she practices is take, after long placements, take time off. And it's what helps her you sustain being involved in foster care, because there's a really high turnover rate and burnout rate for understandable reasons. Our last kiddo, I said yes to her placement because the goal was reunification with her mom. And I really wanted to be a part of that story. Her mom lived near me. She had been placed in a home that was like an hour from her mom, and it was really hard for her mom to get to her. Although it was a longer term situation, because again, we were just wanting to do short term again, I said yes to her. She had huge behaviors, so huge escalations. She ran away twice. She kicked a hole in our wall. Just a lot of big behaviors. I think there's some mental health issues there that made it hard for her to connect and bond with us, with anyone really. She burned through friends in our neighborhood really fast. And I kept hoping that the longer she was in our home, she could settle. And just that love and that stability would help those behaviors calm and stabilize. But as the months went on, they just kept increasing. I think because the situation was very unstable. As that situation got unstable, she would bring that hurt here and act out here. Go figure, right? Like, I mean, I can't imagine. Beginning in January, she had a huge escalation and was up in her room calming down. I had like those tent forts we had that in her closet. It was like a safe space for her to calm down. She had her stuffies and her blankets. And when she was upset, she could just go in there and calm down. She could be with us if she needed comfort, but usually she wanted to be alone when she was really escalated. So we would just like let her be there and go check on her. I had my whole family here, grandkids, kids, even my family from California was here because they'd been here for the holidays. We were going to be going on a hike. And so letting her calm down so she could come on the hike with us. Suddenly we hear the fire alarms go off and we're like, what? So we go to find the source of the fire. And my husband walked into her room and there's smoke pouring out of her room. And she was in her fort and had lit it on fire because she, in an attempt to kill herself and take us down with her. My husband grabbed her out, got the fire out. We knew where the fire extinguishers were, and all those crazy home studies we have to do every year that I hate. Like, oh, I know where the fire extinguisher. So anyway, that sweet girl. So we called our foster agency to tell them what had happened, and they said that we needed to take her to children's psych ward, which was, the kiddo before her had been there, and part of our job was helping him heal from his time there. And we were like, is there any other option? Is there anything else for her? She needs a lot of supports beyond what we could give. We have a generational home, and it was already hard taking care of this kiddo with her running away. She had already had another suicide attempt, but now that she was, trying to burn a house down and my daughter and granddaughter didn't feel safe anymore, I just didn't feel like we could continue to provide the care for her that she needed. She needed a lot of supports. And so we had to bring her to Children's Hospital, which was so painful and so hard for us to do. Yeah. So that was her last placement. We're on break. I'm healing from that emotionally. And I had someone ask me, last week, actually, they said, tell me a success story from foster care. Like, what's one of your success stories? And on one hand, none of them are, because no one should be in foster care. And on the other hand, all of them are, because my hope is that for the time that they're in our family, we're giving them a picture of what love feels like, of what a healthy family feels like. So maybe their adult selves, maybe it will inform their adult life. And I know my grandpa grew up in foster care. And he was a teenager until he finally found a stable placement. He said his mission was to get kicked out of the next foster home faster than he got kicked out of the first one. And so he just went to foster home, but was really loved. We started this conversation talking about our wonderful childhood and all our cousins and our aunties and our uncles. But it's because my grandpa was loved and was able to build a family like that. That inspires me to keep going, even though every story starts with tragedy and usually ends with tragedy.
With Grandpa Jim having been in foster and this being so full circle for you, I did not even think about that. But that is a total breadcrumb moment. And you are leaving all of the breadcrumbs for every child that has come in your home, because they're going to remember that. Oh my gosh.
That was married to your grandma?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
On the other side of that, too, my daddy, his mom left when he was 2. His dad was a horrible man. His own brother put himself in foster care. It was such a terrible situation. My dad was homeless for part of his life with his dad. But he talks about when he was a little boy, there was some neighbors down the street who would invite him over for dinner. And he would sit around and dinner with his family and think, I want to have this someday.
And then he built it.
And I
didn't know that.
And we had that sitting, like, we sat down for dinner as a family. We were not allowed to eat dinner in front of the TV. We sat down for dinner at the table. And man, my dad was a terrible cook, because usually we prefer burnt food. But he was like fighting for that togetherness, that picture he had when he was a young boy, for both of our grandfather and my dad. The thing that they got a picture of family, and God healed their hearts. Both of them found the love of God. And he's the only perfect parent. God's the only truly good father. And then being loved by him taught them how to love their families and heal their families. And so I think about that when we bring in these kids, that we're inviting them into an environment where they can experience God's love and the love of a good father. And in our imperfectness, we try and model that for them.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being vulnerable. I can't even talk because I'm just like bawling right now. I think it's interesting that you had it in your head of private adoption, which would be 1 kid, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe, we don't know. But
this can be 1.
Okay, in your mind, 1 kid, and through God and through these breadcrumbs that he's led you down, you've been able to touch the lives of so many different kids. So he said, you know, why stop with 1 when you have more to spread?
Yeah.
I know. Something I'm going to read that you wrote beforehand, and you said it within your story too. You started the journey with what you knew. And I think that happens for so many people. It's what you know, it's what you're familiar with, it's what you think, and then you end up in something else. And so like Brittany said, you've been able to spread your own breadcrumbs for those coming up behind you, that they don't know you're those breadcrumbs, but they're there. And then the other thing that you said that I think really resonated is you just took the next known step. And sometimes that's what we have whenever it is and whatever you're facing. Like you use the elephant analogy, right? It's like you just have to start somewhere, and you just have to start and do one thing. And so it can be a small thing, and then you take the next step, and then you take the next step.
People say to me, I want to do foster care someday too. I want to get involved that way too. And as long as we have the someday, we're going to do it. It was just doing the next thing and the next thing. Sign up for this class. set up that interview, whatever the next step was. And I still feel like that. I don't know what our next step is for foster care. Maybe one of these kids will end up, maybe 10 of them will end up staying in our home and we'll adopt them. I don't know. I stopped saying, here's what we're going to do and here's what it's going to look like. I literally am just following the breadcrumbs. Right now I'm on a pause, and when I'll notice when I sense the Lord saying, this is the next thing. And then I'll take action and I'll do that. But I'm also waiting and listening for that. We can't just sit passively by and hope we'll stumble into, we do need to be intentional about that and pay attention.
You've used the word control a couple of times now, and that is very much parallel with our episode with Jackie. We did an episode with Jackie with Career and Home Journey, and she talks a lot about letting go of control, trusting in God more. And this is one cool thing that's really cool about this project that we're doing is there are these consistent themes that are popping up in different episodes.
Isn't it funny when we're children and we think our picture of adulthood is that we'll have full control of our lives? And then the more adult we become, the more we realize actually adulthood is deeper and deeper surrender. The sacrificing myself for the blessing of my family. And in turn, I get fulfilled. It's for self, but it's not. It's for them. But I'm enriched because of that. Yeah, it is. It's about more surrender and less control. Control is just stressful because it doesn't work anyway.
It doesn't work anyway. So why do we hold on so tightly sometimes? We need to just let go.
Because we don't trust. We're able to surrender when we trust. I can surrender my time and I can say yes to the next hard thing because I trust that God is good. And if he's leading me into this, even if it's really hard and I don't like it, he's a good God and good will come from this. And so I can trust him that he's leading me. He leads us beside still waters and green pastures. And sometimes he leads us through the valley of the shadow of death. But the point is he's leading us.
Yes. Lisa, you mentioned if we wait for someday will never come and we just need to take action.
Yeah.
And God will continue to lead us. And it's not about knowing everything, but just doing the things. We can't sit around and wait, which is so true because, and you probably know more about this than me, so please help me with this. But in the Bible, it does say, like, you still have to work, right? It doesn't say just sit around and wait and pray and everything will happen. You pray, you talk to God, but you still do the actions to get where you want to be. And then God will rain the blessings down upon you. But you just can't sit and say, like, I'm ready for my grapes to grow, and you don't plant the seed.
The Bible says that faith without works is dead.
That's what it is.
So if it really is just a belief system, it really is useless. Our faith needs to lead to action. It needs to lead to really the whole message of the whole Bible is love God, love people. And love is not a feeling, it's action. It's doing, it's demonstrated. You can't say you love me if you hate your brother. Loving God is loving people.
Those are good. I have one more question before we move on to the breaking bread segment, but the kind of what goes along with two things is that's another consistent theme is especially with these breadcrumbs, right? Like you can't just sit back and hope they come. Like you have to be open and then you have to take action and after you follow them. And so I think that's a really great consistent theme and exactly what y'all are saying right here. And then another quote I really like that kind of goes along in the same vein is, okay, so this is actually a Zach Bryan quote, and I'm not really a fan of it anymore now that all the other stuff came out about like who he is as a person. But one of his song lines that I really like that he is a good songwriter is it goes, I will realize after all this time that someday was always just right here. And that is so true.
Yeah.
So the question I was going to ask, and you don't have to answer because it is personal, is so Brittany, Lisa's dad has passed on and time doesn't matter when there's that much grief. I'd like to hear some of the breadcrumbs he's left for you along this journey. It sounds like his own past was a breadcrumb for you, but are there other ways that he shows up in your life?
Yeah. What has motivated me to stay doing the hard thing of foster care is a quote that my dad would say. He would say, I don't want to be a half-assed Christian. And my dad was not. He was very much loved the Lord, and he very much loved people, very much. And my dad was a nurse at a developmental hospital. Some were fully quadriplegic adults. The last part of his life was autistic men, like nonverbal autistic, very violent, volatile level of autism. After my dad died and we went to clean out his office at the hospital, he had a stethoscope and he had some hospital-y things there at his desk, but it was mostly Bibles and journals. He very much cared about the things of God and cared about people knowing that God loved them. Everything, everywhere he went, at his memorial service, it was on a Tuesday afternoon. There was like 500 people there. And I asked them, I said, do you mind if I ask for a show of hands how many people ever had my dad pray for you? And almost everybody rose their hand. That inspires me. Dad loved out loud. And it wasn't an agenda. He wasn't like one of those guys that like, I'm going to love you and be your friend because I'm going to tell you about Jesus. No, he loved God and he knew God loved people. And so he loved people. It was just very genuine. I want to be that way. I struggle with shyness. I struggle with insecurity, which is a big joke that I'm a pastor's wife who teaches and stuff, that whole part of my life, like the thing I'd never do. And it's what I do. But so that shyness and things that keep me from being friendly and warm. And I think about my dad and I'm like, I want to love people more than my fear.
Oh my gosh. Well, you bring love and you bring joy. And when I picture your dad in my mind, I picture him with that giant smile, and he made everyone laugh and feel great. And he gave the tightest hugs
that broke your bones.
Yes. So that's who he was.
I just want to say, Lisa, you mentioned at the very beginning that your grandma had a way of making, whoever she was with feel like the most important person. And I know that you are passing that along to these kids. I can tell by your story. And I just have to say thank you for that. And thank you for being vulnerable and sharing. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to blubber the rest of the time, but my goodness.
I think this beat the amount of times crying in one episode.
Well, you've got all three of us going.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, I'm sorry. I
You should rename their podcast Soggy Breadcrumbs.
But seriously, I mean, Lisa, I the way you speak, there's attention in your words, there's care in your words, there's love in your words, and I can tell that you are living what your grandma lived and would be very proud of.
Wow.
Yes.
Thank you. That really means a lot.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
Okay. I'm like, I don't even transition, but let's do it. In every episode, we pick one segment, or we let our guests pick the one segment that speaks the most to them, or it's something that they would like to share. And so, Lisa, thank you for choosing Breaking Bread. And so we would love to hear some of the recent things that you're thankful for and just share your gratitude.
That particular topic sparked an interest in me. I lead a book club for ladies, and we go through a book. The book we're going through is 1,000 Gifts by Amboss Camp, and it's about thankfulness. And I read this book years ago in the season when my dad died. The year before that, my husband's dad died of cancer, and they're the ones we built the home with. And so we were his caregivers through his cancer journey. He was also our pastor. So we lost a father and our counselor. And then my dad died. Then a few years later, Eric's mom died of cancer. We were her caregiver as well. And during all this is when our daughter was in crisis. My grief turned to depression. My whole support system was changing. Both of our dads were the best men the best dads. It was a huge loss for us. I came across this book because she talks about finding thankfulness in the midst of grief, being thankful for the little things. She started an exercise where she made a list of 1,000 things to be thankful for. And when something would come up, the steam in her coffee, the sound of the bird, the bubbles in the sink, the hug from her child, little things to big things, she would jot it down on this list. That was one of the ways that I climbed out of that season of depression, was thankfulness, and actually writing down, today I'm thankful for this. Today I'm thankful for this. Today I'm thankful for this. And I've learned that practice, that to find things to thank God for, no matter, it helps lift my mindset out of this thing right here is all that I can see. And this is all that I know. And there's a bigger reality in the Lord, and even in grief, we do not grieve as those who do not have hope, because even in grief, we can have hope if we can be thankful for little things. I'm a woman with big feelings, and so I need to journal every day and get some of those feelings on paper so they don't come out at my family. And so I included that practice of writing. Okay, 3 things every day, 3 things every day, 3 things every day. And it really helped shift my mindset, and it was one of the things that I did to climb out of that depression from the grief. And so I'm doing the 1,000 things. I've started it. I think I'm on 15 things. It's okay. It's not a fancy journal. It's an app on my phone so that I can just pull it out and use it whenever I'm around and about. But I'm really enjoying that journey of thankfulness. It really helps me notice the little things in my life. I think one of the things yesterday was, I'm thankful that I have the kind of life that I can light a scented candle in the morning when I'm reading my Bible and I'm journaling. That is such a privilege. I get to have a scented candle. I don't know, those are things that kind of get lost in the background of our big, wonderful lives. And it's really helpful to just sit there and notice, wow, I am so blessed.
Do you all follow or know who Gretchen Rubin is?
No, I haven't heard that name.
The podcast, and her whole premise is around finding joy. And she says it doesn't have to be, like you said, this big, exorbitant thing. It's about finding the little joys in life that then lead to happiness. So it's the same. I love that.
Yeah. I actually sometimes think the little things are even maybe not better, but it's more meaningful, to find these little things. And maybe it's the coffee cup, or for me, because sometimes I want to get a little sweet treat. I'm just getting into coffee. I get to go through the drive-through and get an iced latte this morning, right? I don't do it every morning, but when I do, I'm this made my day.
Yeah.
And you said you get to. I think the language in that matters, right? Instead of putting to bed, because sometimes I catch myself I have to put Abby to bed. It's I get to put Abby to bed, and that is great one-on-one time that we get.
My granddaughter grabbed a book yesterday and wanted me to read it to her, and it's the same. You know how they do? They're just this is the book I love. Please read me this book. And I have bought 20 other books in hopes that she'll grab a different book, because I'm so tired of this book. And she grabbed the book, and that was my first out. No, I am sitting here with my grandbaby on my lap, asking me to read her a book. Yeah. Stop with your whiny self and enjoy this moment with your grandbaby. Aww. Yeah. So I'll add that to my list. Boring books with my granddaughter.
There you go. That's great. Something great to break bread about. I do have one question before we move into how we
go ahead.
So people listening to this might think, how can I help? What can I do? Where can I go? What could be my next step? So, and maybe it's somebody that can't take the step to foster or adopt. Or, I guess what final you give people listening, or what can the average person do to help? Because, broken systems, we raise broken children, and it's a cycle, right? So what can we do?
That is such a good question, because it's true. Not everybody can actually be a foster family, but we all can be involved in helping kids from hard places. And one of the things that I have experienced is the way that our church community and our neighbors have come around the kiddos in our home. This last kid we had, like I said, she had a lot of big behaviors. She made friends and burned through friends, just the trauma and broken relationships. She doesn't know how to form healthy, lasting relationships, sadly. That starts at home. My neighbors, like knowing, I had one neighbor give her a bike, having other neighbors invite her into their home, let her be friends with their daughters and their daughters in my home, and knowing that she, there's risk involved when, you expose your kids, your precious kids, to kids that have seen a lot in the world and know a lot more. She might have been 9 years old, but she had the worldly knowledge of a 19-year-old. It's a big deal for my neighbors but that is a part of her healing. It's a part of what helped, at least at first, I did men there, but that was because of the issues with her mom. That's what made things grow volatile. And so until that piece started, the acceptance and the love of the neighbor kids and the friends at church, like she had friends, she had stability, she had acceptance, and that was so healing for her. So healing. And the last kiddo we had, that friends at church that, invited him into their home, and he even stole from one of them, and she still had him back in her home, and her kids forgave him. And like, how good for her kids to learn to do that, right? We can protect our kids from learning so much that they don't actually learn how to really love people. And so watching that has helped me feel so supported and has given me breaks. Like, hey, I need time with just my family. You got it. So I'll have her over for a play date so that you can just have time with your family, like that. So being there to support other foster families with your time, with your relationship, with your friendship. We had a community group that brought us a meal every Monday night, gave me a night off of having to cook, and let us just sit and enjoy this wonderful warm meal together. They could bring me a meal. The kid that I talked about that I took to Target to just let him buy toys. I have a friend at church that she isn't able to do foster care, but she has extra resources. So she said, whenever you need anything, call me. So she gave me $100 gift card to Target for me to go spoil him with. There are so many ways. I know groups that go and they clean the bathrooms for foster moms. And, there's the practical things of relationship, money, and time. We all have those things. We all have relationship and time. Some of us have money.
That's so true. And so you gave examples, right? And you're right. It all starts at home. So I think and every community has this, right? Every community has kids in need, and every community has foster and adoptive parents. So I think an action that I'm going to take from this is almost every neighborhood has a Facebook group right now, right? Or like a mom's group, maybe even posing the question, are there homes with at-risk kids in their home? And we don't need to know the details, but how can I help, right? Is it a gift card?
Perfect.
And say, I have clothes for ages, 4 and 5. Are there any foster moms in the neighborhood that need these clothes? So I think these are really good practical ways that we can go out and still help our communities where we live.
I love that. That is spot on, Danny.
So Lisa, at the very end, we always say, find your breadcrumbs or follow your breadcrumbs. We're going to let you decide which one we want to say.
I would say follow.
I knew she was going to say that, Danny.
What?
Follow several times in the conversation. And I was like, I know it's going to be follow. Which
you caught on that. Yeah.
In the conversation, I like it. All right, friends. So go out into your week and follow your breadcrumbs.
Follow your breadcrumbs.
Wait, is there a delay?
I think there's a delay.
Let's try one more time. All right, friends. So go out into your week and follow
your breadcrumbs.
I was waiting for y'all to do it. Did it work? No. Did it work? I don't think so.
I don't think it did. Maybe that's as good as it's going to get, and that's okay.
All right. Lisa, for real though, thank you. This was amazing story that I know is going to touch a lot of people.
We may cuss, we may offend.
Maybe don't listen to this with your kids in the car. We're here to learn and laugh. not to offend.
We are not experts, so take what resonates and professional advice where needed. Thanks for hanging out with us today.
If you've loved today's conversation, subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Continue picking up the breadcrumbs by leaving us a review and sharing.
Follow us on socials. We are at Instagram at The Breadcrumb Effect, TikTok at The Breadcrumb Effect Pod, and YouTube at The Breadcrumb Effect.
Let us know your favorite episode or what you'd like to see.
Want to be a guest or know someone with a story? Fill out our guest interest form linked in our bios.
Finally, let us know if you found the hidden loaf. Until next time, keep picking up those breadcrumbs.
They're leading you exactly where you're meant to be.